have 8 commercial banks in the West doing their damnedest to hold the price down. And that's been shown over and over and over again with, you know, 800 million ounce shortfall, or short position rather, on COMEX, a 4-year structural demand supply deficit in mine supply. Again, between 4 and 6 billion ounces short on the LBMA, which is a much more opaque market. That's why we don't know exactly how much, but estimates say between 4 and 6 billion ounces by that same cast of 8 or so Western commercial banks, a platform where they're trading 290 million ounces of silver per day, which is basically the entire float of the LBMA, which has 800 million ounces, of which 500 belong to the ETF. So they have 300 million ounces that are unencumbered. They're basically trading the entire stash every day, yet they admit that those numbers that they publish of 290 million ounces traded on average per day are 10 times understated, as they only post the final settlement number. So in essence, they're trading 3 billion ounces of silver per day on average, which is 3.5 times annual global mine supply. The numbers, the price discovery on silver are not known. And I mentioned in our last interview about China, Sean Kunkun says, he's the CEO of Dolly Varden, that indeed they are flying all around Latin America buying the silver concentrate and the silver doré directly from the miners and refining it, paying up to double what the West will pay, and then bringing it home and refining it there. They are the largest, China is, second largest producer of silver in the world as well. The fact that Russia is now saying we're going to accumulate it, I don't know of another country that's done that. It's a very big deal. You look at India, just in the last few months, they imported another 150 or 60 million ounces of silver. They've bought close to 900 million over the last 4 years. They're little by little by little draining the world's exchanges. And you look at this coordinated effort between India, who's been on a nonstop accumulation tear, China, who is the second largest producer and now is flying all around the world buying doré and concentrate, and Russia, who is now adding it to their national stockpile along with palladium and platinum. And they're the major production center for palladium and platinum there in South Africa. It's a big deal. And I think being naked short in this market as a commercial bank is an existential threat. And I think that's one of the things that these countries know. The BRICS talk about building a grain exchange. And in the discussions, the gentleman who was tasked at developing it publicly says, we produce and consume more grain than they do in the West, yet we have no ability to control the price. It's controlled on COMEX, but with the development and rollout of the BRICS Grain Exchange, that will change. Well, they're building the BRICS Gold Exchange as well. And with the development, of course, and the actual accentuation of the Shanghai Metals Exchange, which over the last half a year, when you add the cumulative volume of the Shanghai Metals and Futures Exchange together, it's surpassed COMEX. It's the number 2 most heavily traded platform in the world. These exchanges are gaining legitimacy, unlike COMEX, where bars are rehypothecated, 15, 16, 1700% or more, sold over and over and over and over again, where if you stand for delivery, 1 out of 17 will be lucky to get delivery, if not much more than that. You look at Shanghai, in order to buy or trade a contract for silver, you have to buy a bar directly from one of the 6 or 7 approved refineries. They laser etch a number on the bar that is directly attributed to a certificate. It's transparency, it's authentic, and it provides, a confidence in a system where our Western rehypothecated opaque system does anything but that. See, these countries understand it's the Achilles heel. And they're slowly draining the exchanges rather than go in and buy everything up that they could and would end it just like that. They're playing the long game. And now that you see Russia jumping into the mix and saying, no, we're going to start to accumulate it for our state, this puts some of these Western banks on notice. And I'll tell you, to be naked short to that degree is enough to bring down a bank. Bart Chilton, the head of the CFTC, admits that when Bear Stearns failed part of the reason they failed is because of their massive short position in silver, which went from $21 an ounce to $9 an ounce, and they failed. Now, I don't know if that was the primary driver, but Chilton says, look, they called Jamie Dimon into the office and told him he needs to take, this position over. And Jamie said, well, we'll be in violation of position limits. And they said, Bart Chilton said that Hank Paulson and Ben Bernanke said to Jamie, that's okay, get your house in order. Here's a period of time to do so, and all will be good. Fine, he says. Well, at the end of the time period, Bart Chilton went into his supervisor's office, which would be Hank Paulson or Ben Bernanke, and said, look, they're in violation of our agreement. They didn't pare down their position. In fact, they've increased it. They need to be prosecuted. And the answer was, back down, Bart. It's a political decision. Now, he died a week or two later. Was it a man clearing his conscience who knew he was close to death, or was it something more nefarious, or was it just a coincidence? I'm not going to say, but what I am saying is that this was enough to bring down, or partially bring down, a bank like Bear Stearns for being on the wrong side of that trade. And Bart Chilton, the former head of the CFTC, all but admitted that. What does it mean when you have these Western banks massively short, trying to hold down silver with a 4-year-long now structural supply-demand imbalance? And then all of that omitting, as we've talked about before, the military's role in all of this. There is no mention of military in the supply-demand fundamentals. And yet there's copious amounts of silver in all of these high-tech weapons, as we've talked about before. So yeah, I think it's a massive deal. And in fact, I think it's strategically being done. And I think it should be something that puts these Western banks on notice that this is not a smart thing when you have sovereign nations and sovereign wealth funds that work on behalf of these countries that are using the suppression, jiu-jitsu, if you will, using the leverage of your opponent against them. That's exactly what they're doing. And that's why they're not bitching yet, because they're in the siphoning phase. We'll siphon as much as we can at these stupid prices, because it is a strategic metal and it is not industrial. It is strategic. And if you realize that, yes, it's needed in green and digital and electronics and all that stuff, but it's also needed in a military capacity. And to me, that's why India, China, and Russia, are hell-bent on accumulating it, because it's far more than just industrial. Well, and that's probably why they're all in a rush to accumulate it. Because, silver's called inelastic because you don't need so much of it in all of these components. You go to silverwars.org and you'll see just how much silver is needed in all of these high-tech weapons. 500 ounces in the cone of a Tomahawk cruise missile. The present consumption of silver for war purposes is at the rate of 100 million ounces a year. This is 1942, and it says it's only a matter of months before we'll need 200 million ounces per year. And you go here to the supply-demand numbers from the Silver Institute, and you don't see anything in the way of military at all. Electronics, photovoltaic, that's solar panels, brazing, photography, jewelry, where is it? And as a result, this is why these are all of the commodities traded on the COMEX. They are drawing down the stockpiles of precious metals, using the suppression of the Western markets to do just that. So it's a big deal. And I think this is a very strategic deal that these countries, these BRICS countries, understand. Russia understands it, China understands it, India understands it, and they're looking at silver as anything but industrial and far more strategic. And I think using the Western stupidity of suppressing these markets to fight these wars, and the military-industrial complex, it wasn't, you gotta believe that it wasn't Biden who has been making these overtures of giving long-range missiles to the Ukraine as he's walking out the door. Who's pulling the strings? It's the people, probably the military-industrial complex, who's making these decisions. And this is why they've needed to have this massively concentrated short position, the most of any commodity traded on the exchange, in silver because it's needed. And, in 42, they were open about it. Yeah, we need silver for military. But now, even though we've been short supply demand for 4 straight years, it's just strangely off the supply demand numbers by the Silver Institute. And, it makes this kind of stuff makes you into a conspiratorialist. It makes you feel like, yeah, put my tinfoil hat on, or is it real? I mean, why would 8 Western banks hold the largest concentrated short position in a commodity that is being voraciously accumulated? Why do they allow such massive rehypothecation? And why are they short between 4 and 6 billion ounces of silver on the LBMA at a period of time when there's a drive by much of the Southern Hemisphere to accumulate it? These are all the kind of questions I ask myself and come up with the same answer over and over and over again. The military-industrial complex is very powerful, and they make money by keeping these wars going. They often are funding both sides, or they're involved all over the world in selling weapons. And most of what we've given the Ukraine in terms of aid has been in the form of weapons. And then, as Lindsey Graham says, we need to get our money back. So we're enriching the military-industrial complex by providing the weapons. And then after we destroy the country, we come in and steal all of their natural resources. I mean, the whole thing is just gross. But if you put it all together, you can see it.